The earliest people of Japan, known to historians as the Jomon, appeared over 14,000 years ago. They were hunter-gatherers relying on fishing, hunting, and primitive agriculture. Archaeologists have uncovered intricately patterned pottery, some of the oldest in the world, which speaks of a people with a deep connection to ritual, nature, and artistic expression. Their lives were simple but intertwined with the rhythm of the earth, the seasons, and the bounties of the forests and seas around them. As millennia passed, the Yayoi people arrived from the Asian continent, bringing with them rice cultivation, metal tools, and new technologies. This was a turning point. Japan began to shift from scattered tribal communities to more settled villages. Rice, in particular, became the lifeblood of society. With it came hierarchy, land management, and the seeds of political organization. Villages grew, clans formed, and over time, these early societies began to see themselves as part of something larger, something more permanent than mere survival. It was during this era that Japan's earliest myths took shape. Unlike European legends that often celebrated conquest, Japanese mythology emphasized harmony, duty, and divine ancestry. The creation myths recorded in texts like the Kojiki and Nihon Shoki tell of gods descending from the heavens to shape the islands, giving life, rules, and divine authority to the people who would inhabit them. Among these gods, Amaterasu, the Sun Goddess, stood as the ultimate symbol of order, light, and legitimacy. The emperors of Japan would later claim direct descent from her, linking their power to the divine in a way that no conqueror, no matter how mighty, could challenge. Life during these early centuries was not static. Villages often clashed, and regional clans competed for fertile land and control of rivers and coasts. Warfare was limited compared to later eras, but it shaped alliances, marriages, and the rise of influential families. Yet despite these struggles, culture thrived. Pottery, weaving, and ritual developed alongside agriculture, and spiritual beliefs intertwined with daily life. Every ceremony, every festival, every pattern etched in clay carried meaning far beyond survival. It was a way to understand one's place in the world and in the eyes of the gods. By the 3rd century BCE, Japan had entered what historians now call the Yayoi period, a time when bronze weapons and iron tools became more widespread. With these technologies came greater efficiency in farming and construction, which supported larger populations. Villages grew into early towns and regional leaders gained prominence. This period set the stage for social stratification, laying the foundations for a society that would one day develop into a centralized state under an emperor. Yet, the idea of central authority remained deeply intertwined with spirituality. Unlike many civilizations where kings were chosen or conquered, in Japan, rulers claimed legitimacy through descent from the gods. The emperor was not merely a political figure but a sacred bridge between heaven and earth. This belief would shape Japan's history for centuries, influencing law, ritual, and the balance between political ambition and moral duty. Around the 4th and 5th century CE, contact with the Asian mainland intensified. Immigrants from Korea and China introduced advanced agriculture, metallurgy, and political concepts. Buddhism arrived, bringing with it philosophical ideas and artistic traditions that would forever transform Japanese culture. Temples were built, monasteries flourished, and new forms of governance were studied and adapted. Yet even as these innovations arrived, the concept of the emperor as a divine figure remained unshakable, providing continuity amid rapid change. It was during this era that the Yamato clan began to consolidate power. Claiming descent from Amaterasu, they asserted dominance over other clans, slowly creating the earliest form of a centralized Japanese state. The Yamato rulers understood the importance of symbolism as much as strategy. They built palaces, established ritual centers, and ensured that every proclamation linked the ruler to heaven. This combination of spiritual authority and political control would allow them to survive challenges from rival clans and shape the cultural identity of Japan for centuries. Even as the political landscape shifted, the Japanese people maintained a profound connection to nature. Shinto rituals emphasized purification, seasonal festivals, and respect for the kami, the spirits inhabiting rivers, mountains, and forests. Society, in its earliest form, balanced survival, governance, and spiritual practice in ways that would echo through every era of Japanese history. Every river crossed, every mountain climbed, every harvest celebrated was imbued with meaning. The land itself was a participant in the story of the people. By the end of this formative era, Japan had transformed from scattered hunter-gatherer tribes into a society capable of organizing, governing, and envisioning a future. The myths, the rituals, and the early political systems laid a foundation that would endure even as new powers, ideas, and conflicts emerged. It was a Japan where history and legend coexisted seamlessly, where mountains were more than terrain, rivers more than water, and emperors more than rulers. They were living symbols of continuity, legitimacy, and divine order. And in this land of gods and men, the stage was now set. Centuries later, the rise of warriors, shoguns, and feudal lords would build upon these early foundations, but none of it could exist without the careful layering of myths, culture, and spiritual belief established during these ancient centuries. The story of Japan had begun, not with conquest or empire, but with people striving to understand their world, their gods, and their place in both. This was a world where the divine and the mundane were inseparable, where survival demanded ingenuity, faith, and unity, and where the future rulers of Japan learned, consciously or unconsciously, that to rule a land, one must first understand it, not only as land but as living history. Long before the first castles rose on Japan's hills, before banners flapped over fortified gates and the clash of steel echoed across valleys, a new order was quietly taking shape. The small, scattered clans that had survived wars, famine, and the season's harsh moods began to realize that survival required more than courage. It required discipline, loyalty, and strategy. From these crucibles of hardship, the figure of the samurai was born, not just as a warrior but as a symbol of duty, honor, and the emerging identity of Japan itself. In the shadows of ancient forests and along the banks of winding rivers, clans organized themselves around strong leaders. These leaders were no longer simply chieftains. They were the first hints of feudal authority. The samurai emerged as the backbone of these systems, men trained from childhood to master weapons, strategy, and a strict moral code. They were expected to fight without hesitation, obey without question, and live and die for the glory of their lord. Yet their story was not only one of violence, it was also a story of art, ritual, and philosophy. The way a sword was forged, the way a bow was strung, the way a battle formation was planned, each held a meaning as profound as life itself. These early warriors were deeply connected to the land they protected. A river might serve as a boundary between rival clans, a forest as a hiding place, and a mountain as a sacred site. Samurai learned not only to fight but to understand terrain, weather, and human psychology. Leadership demanded a combination of strategic brilliance and moral authority. A clan that lost the respect of its warriors or its people could collapse overnight, while those who inspired loyalty could withstand invasions, famine, and intrigue. The rise of the samurai coincided with the increasing consolidation of power under regional leaders, a process that would eventually culminate in the first shogunates. Clans like the Taira and Minamoto, whose conflicts would later be immortalized in epic tales such as the Tale of the Haika, became dominant forces during this period. Their battles were brutal, their alliances fragile, and their strategies sophisticated. Every victory was celebrated with rituals, every defeat mourned with ceremonies that reinforced the connection between human action and divine favor. It was during these centuries that the ideals of Bushido began to crystallize. Though not codified at first, the principles of honor, loyalty, courage, and self-discipline became the guiding stars of samurai life. To live without honor was considered worse than death. To betray one's lord or people was unforgivable. And yet, the samurai were also patrons of culture. Poetry, calligraphy, tea ceremonies, and the study of philosophy were all expected of a warrior who wished to be truly complete. The image of the samurai as a mere killer is a simplification. They were complex individuals, embodying both discipline and artistry, strategy and ethics. As clans grew more powerful, the landscape of Japan became increasingly fragmented. Small-scale skirmishes evolved into larger wars, and the balance of power shifted constantly. The emperor, though still a divine figure, was increasingly distant from the day-to-day politics of these wars. Real authority lay in the hands of the military families who controlled armies, territories, and resources. This shift set the stage for the feudal system that would dominate Japan for centuries. Political power became inseparable from military might, and loyalty became currency more valuable than gold. By the late 12th century, the culmination of these developments arrived in the form of the first shogunate. The Minamoto clan, after a series of decisive victories and civil wars, established the Kamakura shogunate. The emperor remained a symbolic and spiritual figure, but the shogun became the true ruler of Japan. This was a profound transformation. Authority had shifted from hereditary divine right to earned military power. It was a delicate balance. The shogun needed the legitimacy of the emperor to justify his rule, but he depended on the loyalty of the samurai to maintain control. This era was not only defined by battles and political shifts but also by remarkable cultural achievements. Temples were built, samurai patronized art, and trade between regions grew. Even as rivalries continued, Japan's society developed patterns of governance, law, and ritual that would endure for centuries. The samurai were both warriors and enforcers of social order, ensuring that villages, towns, and provinces could function even amid constant turbulence. The rise of the samurai also brought profound ethical and philosophical changes. Loyalty to one's lord was paramount, but loyalty to family, village, and even one's own honor intertwined with this duty. Courage was admired, but wisdom was required to survive. The life of a samurai was thus a constant negotiation between the brutality of war and the refinement of culture. Each battle, each strategic maneuver, each ritual act was an assertion of identity, both personal and national. Yet despite the order the samurai brought, the period was far from peaceful. Clan rivalries led to brutal wars that could last decades. Strategic marriages, betrayals, and assassination attempts were common. Leaders rose and fell quickly, and the landscape of power shifted like the tides. But this turbulence was precisely what forged the samurai ethos. It demanded adaptability, foresight, and an unbreakable will. By the end of this period, Japan had been transformed. Small tribes and clans had coalesced into powerful military families. The emperor remained the divine figurehead, but real power rested in the hands of those who could wield a sword and command loyalty. The ideals of Bushido had begun to shape society. Warriors were no longer just men of combat. They were guardians of culture, morality, and order. The islands of Japan, once a patchwork of isolated villages, were now bound together by the discipline, honor, and ambition of their rising warrior class. And so, as the centuries moved forward, the stage was set for the age of the shoguns, an era in which the samurai would dominate every facet of life, from politics and war to art and philosophy. The seeds planted during these formative centuries would define the identity of Japan for generations, forging a civilization where duty and honor were inseparable from governance, and where the blade could shape not only the battlefield but the course of history itself. The islands of Japan had long been shaped by the rhythms of nature, the beliefs of the people, and the codes of the samurai. But as the centuries turned, the balance of power shifted, and the land became a stage for ambition, warfare, and consolidation. The age of small, competing clans was ending, and a new era was beginning, one in which the figure of the shogun would dominate the islands, forging a nation out of centuries of fragmentation. After the establishment of the Kamakura shogunate, Japan had experienced relative stability, yet the seeds of conflict never fully disappeared. Regional lords, known as daimyos, retained considerable autonomy, commanding armies, collecting taxes, and defending their territories with unwavering determination. While the shogun claimed overarching authority, true power depended on the loyalty of these warlords. Alliances were fragile. Marriages, promises, and treaties could shift overnight, and a single betrayal could ignite a war that engulfed entire provinces. The 12th and 13th centuries saw Japan grappling with these dynamics, but it was the 15th and 16th centuries, the Sengoku or Warring States period, that brought chaos to its peak. During these decades, the islands were a patchwork of competing clans, each striving for dominance. The Taira and Minamoto rivalries of centuries past had given way to an even more complex web of ambition. Warlords such as Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and later Tokugawa Ieyasu emerged not merely as warriors but as visionaries with the skill to unify a fractured land. Oda Nobunaga was the first to seize the momentum of this era. Ruthless, brilliant, and innovative, he employed new military tactics, firearms, and psychological strategies that would redefine Japanese warfare. Nobunaga's campaigns were as much about diplomacy as battle. He understood that to unify Japan, he needed both to subdue his enemies and to co-opt potential allies. Yet his life was cut short, betrayed by a general he trusted, a reminder that even the most powerful leaders were never safe from the treacherous currents of ambition and loyalty. Following Nobunaga's death, Toyotomi Hideyoshi rose to power, completing many of the unification efforts that Nobunaga had begun. Hideyoshi was a master of both war and politics. He implemented land surveys, restructured taxation, and established systems to control the daimyos, ensuring that loyalty was enforced not only through fear but also through bureaucracy. Yet even he faced the persistent challenge of succession and the looming presence of ambitious regional lords. It was Tokugawa Ieyasu, a shrewd strategist with patience unmatched by his predecessors, who finally solidified control. After the decisive Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, Ieyasu emerged as the uncontested ruler of Japan. He established the Tokugawa shogunate, a system that would govern the islands for over 250 years. The emperor remained a divine figurehead, but real power was concentrated in the hands of the shogun and his bureaucracy. Japan had finally transitioned from centuries of fractured clan-based conflict to a centralized, stable governance. But this stability came at a cost. The Tokugawa regime imposed strict social hierarchies, controlling movement, trade, and even marriage. Samurai were organized into ranks and regulated by strict codes. Peasants, merchants, and artisans lived under rules designed to maintain order and prevent rebellion. While the era brought peace, it also froze society into rigid structures, leaving innovation constrained but culture flourishing within these boundaries. Even in times of relative peace, the influence of the samurai remained central. Military service was no longer a constant necessity, but the ideals of loyalty, discipline, and honor continued to guide governance and social expectation. Samurai families maintained their prestige, training the next generation to uphold the principles that had defined their rise. They became not just warriors but administrators, advisors, and cultural patrons, ensuring that the values of Bushido permeated all aspects of life. During this era, Japan's cities expanded, roads improved, and trade increased internally. Art, literature, and theater flourished. Tea ceremonies, no performances, and intricate gardens reflected the samurai's dual role as warriors and patrons of refinement. Even as the country emerged from the chaos of civil wars, its people remembered the lessons of conflict, the importance of loyalty, strategy, and careful observation of both allies and rivals. Yet beneath the surface, tension remained. The rigid social hierarchy, while maintaining order, limited mobility and fostered discontent among the lower classes. Regional daimyos, though subordinate to the shogun, still harbored ambitions and could challenge authority if opportunities arose. The threat of rebellion, while minimized, was never fully eliminated. Japan had learned to balance power carefully, but the balance was delicate, requiring vigilance and wisdom at every level of governance. By the end of this period, Japan had transformed again. The land that had once been a collection of warring clans was now united under a single military authority. The emperor's role had shifted to spiritual and symbolic significance, while the shogun wielded political, military, and economic control. The samurai had cemented their place as the backbone of society, guiding the country with principles forged through centuries of warfare and cultural evolution. The stage was set for the Tokugawa era, a time of peace that would last for generations, but also a time in which Japan would turn inward, limiting contact with the outside world and cultivating a society uniquely its own. The triumphs and failures of Nobunaga, Hideyoshi, and Ieyasu left a legacy that defined what it meant to rule, to fight, and to lead in Japan. They showed that the unification of a nation required not only the sword but also vision, patience, and the ability to weave loyalty, fear, and respect into a single, enduring system. The story of Japan's civil wars and unification is not just a tale of battles and leaders. It is a story of resilience, strategy, and the human capacity to shape society. It reminds us that history is never linear, that chaos and order coexist, and that even in the darkest periods of conflict, seeds of stability, culture, and identity are being planted, seeds that will grow for centuries to come.